I don't hear God's voice. I don't hear his audible voice. None of the needles would dance that are back on the mixing board. And that really head faked me there for a while because I wanted to hear God's audible voice. And I tried to cut deals with God. I said, can you just do one sentence? I won't tell anybody. Honest. Okay, one word. Let me buy a vowel. We'll keep it all attorney-client privilege. I won't let it out to anybody. But somehow God has chosen to speak to me like he's chosen to speak to many of you through people and circumstances. Wouldn't you say? Through these circumstances. For me, I think this idea of whimsy. This idea of whimsy, not whimsy like silliness, not like a prank. Like if we assembled a Volkswagen bus on the roof, and we should, that would be a prank, right? And it has no shelf life. But whimsy, somehow, it's like smell and rain in the air. Somehow where there's whimsy, it seems to have shelf life, and I seem to see evidence of Jesus in that. Don't you? It's this resonance. There's this something, and a good caper feels like that for me. I practice law, but I think of that's just my day job. That's what I do to earn a living so we can go do other stuff. And not doing stuff so that Jesus will think we're swell, right? Because he already thinks we're swell. Our picture is already in his wallet. But that we could see evidence of Jesus in the middle of this. Now, I love doing pranks. If you hung out with me for a while, you'd get a prank done on you. There's this guy, Doug. He's kind of a soft target. He's been my buddy since junior high. He made the mistake of telling me where he was spending his 10-year anniversary. Big mistake. So he got the hotel room, at the top of this big hotel, and it's cool when the elevator opens up into it. So I checked in with Sweet Maria Goff as he and his wife, and up we went. So we get into the room, and I called room service, and I ordered lobster and creme brulee and seconds and thirds, and then we tidied up and we split. And the whole idea was that he'd have this awesome time, and then when he left, he'd get this $400 bill from me and be like, Bob. Well, he's been trying to get back at me for years now, but he can't because I'm a lawyer. So I get a call about 3 years ago from this fellow, and he says, my name is Kamuna Nweri, I'm the ambassador from Uganda, and I'm aware of this and this, and I want to know if you'll be counsel for the Republic of Uganda. Thinking, what, Uganda needs a lawyer? It was Doug. I thought, I can't lie, that was a good accent, but it was Doug. So he said, I'm leaving for Uganda, I'll call you in 2 months when I get back. And I didn't give it another thought, and 2 months later the phone rings. And he says, this is Kamuna Nweri, you need to meet me in New York on Saturday. So I said, yes. So now I'm getting off the plane at JFK, thinking Doug's going to have this gotcha sign at the bottom, but instead there's all these people from Uganda's cabinet there. And I'm like, so I think this jolly guy comes running up and he says, I'm Kamuna Nweri. And I said, of course you are. And then he introduced me as the new consul for Uganda. I'm thinking, you said counsel like lawyer. He said, no. I said consul like diplomat. And I'm thinking, are you guys smelling whimsy in the air? I don't hear God's audible voice, but I see through these circumstances, these unlikely things, these inexplicable things, that idea of whimsy. So it gets approved. I got to tell you, this is the coolest thing about being consul for Uganda. The first thing, you get some bitchin' license plates. It's awesome. You can park anywhere. You can park on the driveway, curbs, anything. You get these little flags for your car. It's a little much for the Jeep, but they're 2 little Ugandan flags. But the best part about this whole thing? I have diplomatic immunity. I could kill you. I could. The stage is now Uganda. So here's the deal. What do? We hear compelling things about God, and we think, what is our response to that? And so I think in terms of capers. I think in terms of whimsy and how we might make a difference. Now, I live in San Diego, but I work in Seattle. The guy with that movie, Up in the Air? He's got nothing on me. For 20 years, I've been commuting back and forth to work. This idea of having your office kind of define you, I thought that made a lot of sense. So I set up an office kind of halfway, a little bit closer to San Diego. It's on Tom Sawyer Island. And on Tom Sawyer Island, it's the only place you have to take a raft to get to. And there's a little pier off the end. You guys know where that is. You do know where that is. And they have everybody thinks it's a prop. It's not. It's my office. And so anybody I want to meet, I meet on Tom Sawyer Island if it's a really important, because it isn't just whimsy, it's strategic whimsy. Wouldn't you agree? Whimsy, just not silliness, strategic whimsy. So who was one of our first visitors? The Chief Justice of Uganda Supreme Court flew into LAX. I said, would you like to come to my office? And he said, yes. So we drove by all the high rises and they were like, nope. So we pull up to Disneyland and I got him ears. We headed for Tom Sawyer Island. There we go. I told him the rule is you have to wear the ears all day long. I took him on Indiana Jones, and the darts and the big rock comes down. We finished and I said, wasn't that awesome? It's just like the movie, right? And he's like, there's a movie? I'm like, no! But here's the deal. The conversations turn. When you get people together around Jesus Christ, the conversations turn. And we started talking on Tom Sawyer Island about kids in jails and about kids that are being abducted and witch doctors and child sacrifice. And we started catching a caper together. We said, couldn't we make a difference? So we started going into jails in Uganda. If I don't want your daughter hanging out or your son hanging out with my daughter, I just accuse him of defilement. 3 years later, he's still sitting in a jail. So we started going to jails and finding kids. We tried 71 cases. 71 kids in for 3-4 years, having never stepped foot in a courtroom, wrongly imprisoned. When the law says 30 days and you're out, 3 or 4 years later, they're there. So what happens is our reaction as people, forget being lawyers, we could say we could make a difference. We could do stuff. So I bought the entire Ugandan law library, both books. And we just started briefing cases. If you say, well, I'm not a lawyer, it wouldn't matter. I think what Jesus is saying, to me at least, because I don't hear his audible voice, is show up. Let's go do stuff. And again, I'm not confused about my faith that Jesus is going to think I'm swell because I'm doing stuff. But I'm going to hear his audible voice. Acts 1:1, Theophilus, look for many convincing proofs that Jesus is alive. That's what it sounds like to me. It seems like we're looking for convincing proofs that he's alive. So we heard about 3 or 4 months ago, a kid named, we'll call him Charlie, gets abducted by a witch doctor. And they cut off body parts from him. He won't have a family. And we tried the case. We said, let's go try the case against this witch doctor. We found a scrappy judge who would try the case. Immediately, juju bags and all kinds of things started showing up on his front doors. He gets 5 guys with machine guns around the house. And I'm in a hut across from the courthouse with all my stuff piled up against the door. But what happens from that is the first conviction in Uganda's history. What happens is followers of Jesus, we get out, and that idea of whimsy, you can smell it in there, you just go do stuff, and then incredible things happen. And Jesus, over and over again, doesn't he use unlikely people? And he uses unlikely kids like this one we'll call Charlie, 7 years old. And I got to tell you the end of the story. So 2 weeks ago, I get a call from a fellow, and he says, Bob, you don't know me from Adam, but I was the head of surgery at USC for 20 years, and I'm now at Cedars-Sinai. And I heard about what happened to this little boy. I'll fix him. I said, how do you do this? And he started describing how he does what he does. And he said, you know what? It takes 6 months. He and his family can live with me. This is a guy that hasn't bumped into Jesus. But isn't that the way whimsy metastasizes in the most wonderful way? You see it happening. People say, I'm in. How do we do this? I'm going to tell you one last thing, and then we're done. A lawyer. When I'm given depositions, instructions, I say, I want you to have your palms up the whole time. Here, guys, close your fist for a second. If you're like this, you can get mad. There's crummy stuff you've heard about. People getting imprisoned, other bad things happening. If your body is closed-fisted, you can get mad about it. I could get mad about a hamburger. Now do this. And if your palm's up, you can't get mad about a thing. And somehow God knit us together that the position of our body and the position of our hearts would be the same. They'd be linked together. And so as we launch into the evening, let's do it palms up. Let's say, what is it that God has for us as we continue to live in a whimsical way into what he has? Thanks a bunch.